Welcome to our podcast born in Silicon Valley, where we interview startup founders exploring their journeys, their success challenges, and lessons learned. We hope you'll be excited in discovering what it takes to build a thriving startup. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, and here with us today we have Piero Nunez-Del Risco, co-founder and CEO of Pana. Piero, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jake.
Great. Well, thanks for joining. And a little bit more about Piero. He is not just the co-founder and CEO of the company. They went through Y Combinator. They're a challenger bank for the cross-border economy, and they are on a mission to provide accessible, affordable, and convenient financial services to millions of people who move money across borders. Before founding Pana, Piero was the head of digital banking at Scotiabank for the Caribbean, Central America, and Uruguay region. Piero, before we jump into your company, and we're going to talk about what you're building, why you're building it, um, where are you joining us from today?
Florida. I'm actually in Florida. This is where I'm based at.
Great. Florida's a great place. I love that town. I love, or state and the town, Miami, South Beach, whatever you want to call it, is where I typically go. Where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Dominican Republic, and a couple of years ago, we decided to move to the U.S., and that's where the thesis that we're tackling is not that I had just I'd heard of it, but now I got to live through it, and got to live in flesh and bones what it means to come into a new country, from scratch, start, get your SSN, start building credit, and the whole 9 yards, right? So yeah, I'm originally from Dominican Republic, and yeah, living in Florida.
That's great. The DR is what it's known as for a lot of Americans that travel there. It's a great country, and spent a few times traveling there as well. Um, when you got to the U.S., you had already had experience in the fintech or financial services space, and you went through the process. Um, Before we kind of walk through what inspired you and what you're building, kind of give us a little bit more background of you. What shaped you to become an entrepreneur? Were you somebody that had paper routes, lemonade stands, sold things to your friends? Like, where's the DNA from an entrepreneur coming from?
So I was born in a family of very very intertwined and immersed in the media industry, in the arts. My dad used to um, he was this huge TV celebrity, and
Hmm.
he was, I don't know, an author, writer, TV producer, and host. And I, like, cousins and other cousins and uncles were, some singers, some are in theater and or in movies or whatever, down in my home country, Dominican Republic. And like, it was always expected that, kind of like most of us, would somehow continue that trajectory of the media industry, right, of TV or whatever. And somehow it was clear to me that that was not what I wanted. I loved business. I loved making business. I love financial services. And I discovered that, like, at 15 years old or something like that. And um, I remember I told my now wife, she was my girlfriend back then, I told her, I will have my bank one day. Uh, I'm sure of that. And, I always knew that it was easy for me to speak out, which is, very comes in handy when you're an entrepreneur, to articulate a vision. It was easy for me to come up with ideas and connect the dots and, see the big picture. Um, so I had to work on other stuff, like, the technical piece, the technical aspect, the execution, and whatnot, right? So I went ahead and started our career in banking, in insurance, in financial and investments. Um, and I even had another fintech, another startup, which I can tell you that we learned a lot, and we had
Yeah.
some successes as well. But anyway, um, somehow I always knew I was I had this big mission and this big dreams of impacting millions of lives, and I was ready for it, and I had the energy for it, and I had the drive for it, and something made a lot of sense when it came to building something that had a lot of a huge impact on millions of lives. And it was about, how do I get there? How do I get prepared? How do I train myself, mentally, emotionally, technically? How do I get that? And that's a career I kind of like kicked off, or kick started back when I was a teenager.
Wow. Starting in the teenage years, I don't even remember thinking about business as a teenager. It was about, playing sports and going to parties, and eventually we'll go to college, and then you'll figure out when you get out of college what you want to do. But to really start at a younger age and having clarity about what you want to do, it's really a good head start and an edge. Um, you came from the Dominican Republic, you're in the US today. If the numbers are accurate, there's 62 million of us Latinos in the US. um, what's the main problem you're trying to solve for Latinos or internationals in the U.S.? And what's the experience that people go through when they come here that are not from here when it comes to financial services and institutions?
Yeah, so from the moment you come into the country up until when you've been living here for many years, there are many pain points across the board. I mean, first of all, what happened to me? I came to the U.S. first. Be, w- Getting your SSN takes a couple of months. In my case, while I didn't have an SSN, I needed a bank account. I needed to rent a car, to buy a car. I needed to rent a house. I needed to get a phone line, and many other services. And it is so hard. And it's 2024. You still can't believe that you go to a bank and it's so hard to get a bank account, let, let alone do it online. And, even when you have been here for a while, you kind of like, you stay, kind of like out of the system. And it's very hard to build a credit. And even if you have an SSN and you do things right, it's very hard to build a credit. You're still credit thin, even when it's a year into your residency or whichever. So there have been many, little small details that a lot of people don't see, but definitely uh, we as immigrants um, are living that, right. And anyway, we saw that banking was not built by Latinos, and definitely that had an impact on the state of products and services right now. So we had done this before in Latam, as a team, in our personal experiences, and we said we definitely have an edge on the way we are seeing this and what we can do about it. First of all, starting with opening a bank account. Then how can you take that same 10x better experience in opening a bank account to sending money abroad? Then maybe in the future, we became that first bank account, we can become the first credit card, the first mortgage, the first auto loan. And why not a cross-border product, right? So yeah, that's how it started.
When you talk about NSN, we're talking about social security number that you need that to apply to get a bank account. For immigrants that come in that don't have that and they decide to use your your challenger bank or neobank, your online bank, which you've created, what do they need to have?
They can use their passport. They can use their national ID, their government issue national ID from their home country, and with that, they can open a bank account. This
So
is
they
something
don't,
I couldn't do when I came to the
yeah.
US a year and a half ago. I searched online. I went to a couple of branches, and they wouldn't open a bank account for me, because I didn't have a proof of residency or whichever. Um, I had just moved to the country. I didn't have a proof of residency. So online it was impossible. So you could only do it at a branch. And when I got to a branch of a big bank branch, it was a horrible experience. I felt they didn't care for my business. I was like, yeah, you can sit there if you want, whatever. And then they gave me an ATM card, which is not even a debit card. And I'm like, how am I supposed to buy with this? So honestly, and I never got a hold of that officer ever again. I wrote like a million emails. How can I make a wire transfer? How can I? No one answered. And I said, definitely, this is something we can fix. This is something you can improve 10x. And by the way, US Hispanics, 62 million, we are a $3.4 trillion GDP. We would be one of the fifth largest economies from a GDP perspective in the world if we were a country. And Hispanics will be 110 million in 2030, right? So, um, I'm sorry, in 2060. So, it is important that we understand the growth of this community and that we serve it right.
Yeah. Before this episode, because as a Latino myself, born and raised in the US, in fact, I just went on a ski trip to Whistler in Vancouver, north of Vancouver, Canada, and my passport had expired. And so I had to go into San Francisco and go into an office and apply to get expedited renewed passport because I was leaving in 10 days and that's impossible to get a passport, but they do have expedite services. And I was being questioned as if I wasn't even an American, like as if I'd never lived here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I was born and raised here.
Yeah.
They wanted my birth certificate from when I was, born. And anyway, long story short, I understand policies and procedures. Got through it. It was, an eye-opening experience. But you know, if you look at the market, 62 million Latinos, 9.3%. This is from ChatGPT right before I jumped on here. Households are unbanked, meaning that they don't have a checking account or a savings account. 24% of Latinos are underbanked, indicating they don't always use traditional banking services. They might use check cashiers, payday lenders, different alternative options. So if you come here and you say make money and you have families back in your country, what's the typical process? How do you get money out of the country back to them if you don't have a bank account?
So that's a great question, and obviously one that where we're highly focused. We instead of trying to bank the underbanked, you know, the way we see this is that for every U.S. Hispanic, there are 2 to 3 family members outside the U.S. to whom they're connected to, and that economy is completely overseen. I mean, and that is completely underserved. That's 83% underserved. 62 million Hispanics send about 20% of their paycheck to their families back home. And that has changed a lot. That's not just a help they're sending back home. Now they have investments back home. Now they have a car loan back home or a home loan back home. They pay it as an investment. And this flow of money is still 83% in cash. And the question is why? So when you look at the typical paycheck for one of our target customers, today that small business is going to pay them in cash or a physical paycheck for many reasons. Many times this person ends up cashing that check at a check cashier across the street for 1.75%, and then they have to go at Western Union or MoneyGram or whichever legacy players and send a remittance for 6%, and that's going to get there in a couple of hours or maybe next day. um, what How we improve that experience is that this person might be getting a physical paycheck because they couldn't get a bank account, so they need to get paid in cash. So now that they can actually get a bank account with Pana, they can get a direct deposit, which is even easier for the small business. So once you get a direct deposit, what do? You don't have to go to a cash only kiosk to send a remittance, you send a remittance within the app. And it's going to get there in a couple of minutes or seconds or a couple of hours. So, way easier, it's way faster, way cheaper, and much better experience. So, this is one of the things that we are having most of the success on in tackling the cash economy.
How big is that cash economy? You threw out some percentages and some numbers. When we talk about real dollars, how much money is going across the border on a yearly basis?
$150 billion a year, and 83% of that is still cash. Meaning,
Wow.
I go to a cash kiosk in the US, and someone in Latam goes to a cash kiosk and picks it up.
And with your platform, do is it a mobile app? Is it something that both parties need to have? It's all sort of a vertically
Both
integrated
parties
platform.
could have it, but not necessarily. I mean, a person in the US can simply download the app, um, open a bank account 10 times easier than what it would take in a typical bank um, or community bank. And, just load money to it. You can go to a retailer and deposit cash to it, that you can get your direct deposit in it. You can use many ways of depositing cash. So once the money is there, you can spend it with your debit card, send it abroad, as easy as it should be.
When you look at the market, there's a lot of people out there to target. What's worked for you in terms of getting your brand in front of customers or potential prospects? Um, what, from a strategic perspective and a marketing perspective, are you getting traction in?
So I think it was all about going to the problem and understanding who has the problem. So ironically, most of the people who end up opening the bank account are not the ones who are seeking for your product, and they're not that aware sometimes that they actually need the product. Most of them are. But who does it really hurt to? And that's where we discovered that, small businesses, Hispanic owned small businesses, when they need to pay in cash, it hurts. It's uncomfortable, it's cumbersome, it's expensive, and it's informal to pay in cash because your employee does not have a bank account. So we figure out that, helping employees open bank account, it was not just something good for the employee. So they're now banked. Now they can save tons of cash. Now they can, start getting, building a history and building and getting more formalized. But the employer is also happier, and we've talked to small business owners that they even got mugged because people now know that he needs to handle cash every Thursday to make payroll because half of his payroll is in cash. So we're helping these folks move and migrate from the cash economy to the digital one.
God, that's great. You don't think about getting mugged when you're doing business, but if you're a cash heavy company and people know about that, yeah, the danger is there. So I understand that. Um, you went through Y Combinator, and when you went through Y Combinator, did you move from the DR to go to Y Combinator? Were you already here? How did you hear about Y Combinator?
No, no. First of all, what YC is like the holy grail of I don't know, in my generation, a couple of folks, maybe a bit older than me, but also younger than me. If you're in the startup world, you obviously know what YC is, and if you probably like me have applied a couple of times and got rejected, and me and my co-founder Luis, we had individually had applied and got rejected before with other ideas or other projects, and this time around we kind of like even had given up on trying to get to YC. But when we got together and we started talking about Pana and what we actually could build, and it started sounding like, no, dude, I think we have something here, man. I think this. I think this is good. I think this could get into YC. So we started thinking about it, and yeah, we applied. As soon as we started coding, we applied to YC and got in. That was January 22. We got in for the summer batch, it's summer 22 batch, but um, we actually applied as soon as it was open, and we got in. Um, I was I had already decided to move to the US, and I had already started moving, and that experience was the trigger for Pana. When I tried to open a bank account a couple of months before, and I lived in flesh and bones what it really meant to be an immigrant and just trying to get basic products and services. It's horrible. It's uncomfortable. You feel unwanted, and it shouldn't be. It doesn't matter if you speak English. If you don't, it's even worse. It doesn't matter if you don't understand the culture. It's worse if you don't. Uh, but it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, congratulations on getting into Y Combinator and coming out of that. Um, what did you expect to learn going through YC, and what was maybe something insightful that you didn't know you would learn that has been very useful for you coming out of it?
So when you have admired and or looked at YC as that holy grail, as I said, um, you've studied a lot. You know, the things that they put out on blogs, PGs, essays, and things like that. So, in our case, we really understood like the mindset of YC, right? Um, because of our background and because where we came from, and we had experience second time fintech founders and stuff. Sometimes I think you kind of like feel you know it all, and when you get to YC, you really understand that no matter what you know, you gotta unlearn what you already knew, and kind of like learn again basic stuff of building a company. So it is so amazing to be surrounded not only by millions of um, data points and resources of information that are really valuable, group partners that are incredibly have been incredibly successful, but also by a community. The community is amazing, and it's so interesting to and so it's such an honor to be a part of that community and just to be able to reach out to someone and get an advice. So yeah, that was amazing. Just getting to know everyone and hearing how those people think.
Yeah, we hear that time and time again, that there's so much to get from the community that helps you, not just build relationships, but also support each other along the process. Sometimes building a company at the top can be lonely. There's no one really there all the time to guide you, but to have an ear that can listen to your problem and maybe vice versa, it's always
Yeah.
a beneficial mental health, free collaboration solution, which is pretty amazing. Um, as you look into 2024, what are you excited about Pana?
I'm really excited that so up until this point, you know, we have been laying out the groundwork. We've been building a company, building a team, um, building a product, and there's a very important phase where you optimize and get to that product market fit that so many people talk about. Um, so we launched in you know as part of YC's demo day, um, in Q3, Q4 2020, three, sorry, 2022. And, from that point on, you just start building, you ship out your product, you got to learn from that usage, you got to talk to your customers, you got to understand all of that. And then you got to go back and iterate on that feedback and then launch again and then continue to ship based on that, on those feedback and those iterations definitely are what create. It's what creates that value. Um, I am so proud of the team that we've built, and the team that I'm it's an honor to be a part of. Um, and now we are so excited to have laid out that groundwork, prepared ourselves for the for that growth. Like we've been trying to working very hard to reach that product market fit. We now have gotten that product market fit. So 2024 is so exciting because the path is clear. The road ahead is going to be tough, but we have the necessary energy to take on that. And it's about just showing them what we've got. So that's what I'm excited about in 2024, just growing and making sure we keep building Pana, and we keep building on that foundation that we've been building so far.
Really cool. Is the product out there? Like, if people wanted to find it, where would they go? Where would they find you?
Yeah, so you can go to getpana.app, or you can do holapana.com, whichever works best. You can go to the any of the app stores, and Apple or Google, and download the app. It's very easy to use. Really, it's the product I wanted and I needed in 2022, and I didn't have. So I'm really happy to be part of this journey where we've been able to build something that I personally use and I personally needed and I personally value, just like the rest of our team, who's gone through the same type of experiences.
Yeah. Just so the listeners know, Pana is Panna. And is that correct?
Sorry,
Yep.
I'm not sure why I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Jesus. Okay, cool. So just for the listeners, it's Panna, correct?
No, Pana.
Or is it PA? Okay. So for the listeners out there, if you're looking for the app, it's Pana, um, and getpanna.com. Um, you know, as you look at the team that's helped you build this, uh, you have to get it right, especially in those first hires. How big are you today, and what's worked for you in filtering out the bad and filtering in the good employees?
Yeah, so we're 14 right now. Right now we are a team of 14. Sorry. Let me hold on. I don't know why.
Is there a
Sorry for
slight
that.
delay or something? Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's kind of like fixed now.
yeah, it'll all flesh out, so no big deal.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you great.
Yeah, maybe some on my side. Anyway, sorry for that. Um, as I was saying, we're a team of 14 right now. Um, I think that is it's been very very important from the beginning. First of all, the relationship between me and my co-founder. Luis is, probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in terms of partnering with someone. As my co-founder, amazing human being, and someone with whom we can agree and we can disagree, and and it really works. And honestly, I think that is reflected on the team, and everyone sees that, right, and they're inspired by that. Second, a team, sometimes we interview people for whom we don't have a role yet. What do you mean? So sometimes we meet people that they really look like, you can sense that they're very talented, right? uh, and sometimes we don't even have a role for that person, as I was saying. But it's very, very important to focus first on the person and on the talent before the role, because I think that's gonna play a huge role in their trajectory in the company. So anyway, the culture in the Pana team is amazing. We've been able to build a team that is really excited. It's a team of very highly productive professionals, very intertwined with the mission. They have felt this in flesh and bones. They have been entrepreneurs themselves and or immigrants themselves. So anyway, yeah, very very excited to just be a part of this team.
Yeah, that's great. As we wrap up here, we're gonna switch gears, ask a couple personal questions. Um, for you, what do you do to keep a positive perspective in the up and down journey of building a startup?
Oh man, that's that's a very that falls very close to home because um as I was saying, I come from a family of artists, and usually a trait that we share is that we're more emotional. We're more kind of like connected to our emotional side. Um, and when you start building a company, the emotional threshold is so hard that you gotta be very sure that you're gonna want to do that, and you're gonna be able to, have the resiliency to go through that. Um, I always try to prepare myself for that. I've read books. I've trained myself. I've gone to work to big corporations to train myself from an emotional perspective and other perspectives, of course, to make sure that I have the strength and the emotional resilience to go through that. I think if you, I think there's something, the superpower of an entrepreneur is that question that we ask ourselves of how hard can it be? And that question is really based on maybe naiveness, maybe missing a link, maybe seeing something that others don't see. And that is the ability that we have to go after that and tackle that. Um, but once you try that and you jump, you're gonna, as you said, you're gonna face a lot of challenges. So personally, I think you gotta know yourself. You gotta understand yourself. You gotta understand what are your strengths and your weaknesses, and very consciously work on those things that that you're not strong at, so you can complement yourself, or try to become more whole as an entrepreneur, and try to tackle and go through those processes, because it's going to be very hard. This is very hard, and it takes an emotional toll, an economic toll. So yeah, I think you gotta think very well, but also prep yourself and make sure you've trained yourself to go through this.
Yeah, that's great. Um, you talked about books and whatnot. Any book in particular that you thought was real helpful?
There's this book about from Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, that I loved. And there are many books that go on that same line, but this was the first one that I read, and that really changed a lot. And it speaks a lot about how you have that self and that ego, and that artist, which is not just a painter. An artist could be a customer service representative that went the extra mile, or a plastic surgeon or a surgeon that did something wonderful and amazing. And that's what he calls the artist. And that artist lives in the self. So there's this journey about how do you connect with yourself, not with your ego. And that obviously opened up a huge world of discovery and trying to understand that and to work on that. And this book might not make sense to everyone, but definitely I think if you're going through the startup journey, this is surely a book that'll will come in handy. It's called The Art of War, and it's a very good book. And yeah, there are a couple of others in that line, but I do recommend that.
Yeah, that's great. I've heard about that. I've read that one, and I think that's incredible. Last question for you. What's some advice you've gotten from another founder that you thought was priceless that you can share with the listeners that has helped you and maybe could help them?
Uh, there are many. One of the things that really resonated with me was one that during YC, there was this other founder. Um, he had gone through startups, he had failed, he had succeeded, and you know, and he made a huge importance and point about people that are are the best at what they do, but that not necessarily think like you do, and because we have a bias to hiring people and to recruiting people that think like us, and just making sure that while you want to have this cultural fit, comfortable with that difference of opinion and difference of perspective, because that person thinks differently. There's a sweet spot there, and there's so much building happens when you are able to you know not only work with people and build with people that think differently, but you're able to do that constructively. So I starting the batch, one of them told me that, and it really resonated with me, and obviously carried that all the way.
That's really cool. I love to hear that. Um, you know, uh, Piero, I want to thank you so much for jumping on here and sharing your story, and also excited to see what happens with your product and in this next 12, 24 months, what that looks like. So it'd be great to have you come back and give us an update when you get there. And then also want to thank the listeners for listening. I think this is a really inspiring story, not just because um, we both happen to be Latinos, but there's 62 million other Latinos out there that, and many other immigrants and many other cultures that most likely will go through the same scenario at some point. Um, so thanks for the listeners for being here today. And just want to, again, show my appreciation and gratitude for that. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to catch up with you all on the next episode. Until then, take care.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to all the entrepreneurs that have joined to make this podcast possible. And for all the listeners for listening. It means the world to me that you chose to spend your time with us today. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to connect with you all soon on the next episode. Take care. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.